Welcome everyone to the Malvern Retreat House and our little panel discussion on faith and life that we make available every Saturday. So, you want to introduce yourself there, Scott?
I'm Scott Mullen.
And?
Peter Land.
Great, thanks Scott and thanks Peter for joining us. We had a couple of retreats this past week. Christus Rex was one, and also Fury Memorial was with them. And both of you worked this weekend, right?
Yes.
These are our two wonderful hospitality coordinators. So thanks
Scott's
for helping.
the senior hospitality coordinator.
Oh, yeah.
Learning under him.
A little neophyte.
Yes.
Senior by like 2 weeks.
About 2 weeks, yeah. So that was on Friday and Saturday, and that was a lot of fun. And where were some of the people Zooming in from?
Well, we had one Zooming all the way from California, Florida, Tennessee, Maryland, and Massachusetts.
Yeah.
The states I remember.
Yeah.
There might have been one more, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
There was about 12 to 14 retreatants Zooming in for the retreat. So,
That's great.
yeah.
And then we had a retreat on Sunday down at the Family Life Center. You worked on that one too, Peter?
I did, yeah. That was a beautiful day. I think there were around maybe 50 or so people all together, families and children, a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm. There was a music ministry, Bethany Band.
Bethany, yeah.
And they were excellent.
Yeah.
It just seemed like it was a very life-giving day for everybody.
Yeah, yeah. So, and then this coming weekend, we have the Legion of Mary. Are you working this weekend?
Yes.
You are. You working too?
I am.
Oh, great. So we have the Legion of Mary. And how many people are Zooming for that one?
I was told about 30.
30. That's probably the most virtual retreatants that we've had yet. So
Yes.
that's good. And also on Saturday, probably many of you know this, on Saturday, the founder of the Knights of Columbus, Father Michael McGivney, is being beatified. And he's a priest from the Archdiocese of Hartford. So Hartford, when he becomes a saint, God willing, Hartford will be one of the few American cities that has a native son who's a saint, and a priest and a saint.
Is his body there?
It is.
Okay.
It's buried in, I think, St. Mary's Parish,
Okay.
and it's in Hartford, Connecticut.
Exciting.
Yeah, it is. So it's good, and they're really it's an international organization. They do such good work, so that's really great. Anyway, what we'd like to do today is talk about this issue of formation, ongoing formation for people who are Catholics. And one of the things that we do here at the Malvern Retreat House is hopefully provide a wonderful weekend experience for people. But we can't do everything on a weekend. So a lot of people's, it's the responsibility of retreatants to follow up the retreat with some type of ongoing faith formation, and ideally they're involved with their formation beforehand. So let's just talk a little bit about faith formation in the Catholic Church. Scott, what comes to mind when you hear, ongoing faith formation in the church?
I think of obvious quick things like Bible studies, RCIA programs, a lot of stuff that people just do on their own to try to grab what they can outside of Mass, different Catholic media sources.
You're one of
I'm a
them.
big proponent or guilty of that, however you want to look at it.
Yeah.
So those are the first things that come to mind.
Yeah. And yourself, Peter?
Well, I think of elements that are experiential. So prayer, whether personal or group prayer, pilgrimages, things that involve like the whole person, service work.
Oh, yeah.
I think of my own college education and the focus on the formation and the education of the whole person. That was a motto of the Jesuit institution. And all the things that they involved me in directly, it was much more than just intellectual learning.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was a distinction you made this past weekend, was between adult education and faith formation.
Yeah, yeah.
Which I appreciated.
Scott, we had a conversation, maybe just yesterday, about how lots of times in our parishes we're providing a lot of good resources and programs for adult education, but that's only part of this bigger picture called adult faith formation. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we were talking a little bit about there is a need for an intellectual component, just for knowledge.
Sure.
There's a lot that's lost along the way, or a lot that I know I missed out on, say, not too long after confirmation, in terms of just knowledge of the faith.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to be said for being able to get some of that. And then but there's also a necessity for, as Pete mentioned, that experiential component, or even like being a mentored into the faith.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some Christian sects that are really good at doing that. And it'd be good to see some of the good that they do and incorporate that into the fullness of the faith that we have, and be able to take those kinds of practical tools. What would it mean to be mentored into the faith? I know that I had the fortunate reality of having some really good priests in my life during my 20s that I could talk to over long periods of time, over a period of 3, 4, or 5 years, and good core groups of friends. And through those experiences, that was the formation of my faith, where it wasn't just the intellectual component, although I don't want to bad talk the intellectual. That was so enlightening for me to be able to get a lot of information. But to be able to have others that were learning that with me and living it out, especially at that impressionable age in early 20s, was huge. And I knew that when I was experiencing that, many years after having been given that wasn't the typical experience for
sure wasn't.
young Catholics.
Yeah. I think part of the problem when we talk about formation is there's so many different names that it goes by. Sometimes it's called formation, sometimes it's called ongoing formation, sometimes it's called ongoing conversion. Another one is catechesis. That's a real mouthful, ongoing catechesis. But we're not talking, as I said earlier, about simply education. Education is really important. A lot of Catholics only understand the faith at the level of a 5th grader sometimes, or an 8th grader, or maybe high school. So this is post-baptismal faith formation. It's for people who have been baptized and how they can continue to mature in their faith and deepen their relationship with Jesus Christ. You mentioned the importance of having people involved with that process. So, the fancy word for that are formators, that we all need people who actually invest in us, they disciple us. You mentioned priests that you knew who really took an interest in you as a person and built into you. Who were some other people that have affected your faith, or your faith, Scott, or just the faith of people out there?
Well, close friends played a role. I think even prior to it having a particularly Catholic label, there were some friends in high school that even just their faith witness made me kind of scratch my head and wondered why I wasn't as enthused for my faith as they were for theirs at the time. So that played a big role. I think my parents played a big role. At a certain age, I guess maybe it's typical, I sort of dismissed my parents, but they did, without my even realizing it was there at the time. I didn't appreciate it till later in life, but they did really provide a strong but quiet foundation for us in regards to the faith. Otherwise, I don't think I would have paid it as much attention when I was coming into my own intellectually. I wanted to see what was at my foundation before I rejected it. And that was the beginning of kind of my path back into Catholicism as a young adult.
And Peter, yourself, other people in your life, or other types of people in the lives of people who play a role in forming their faith?
Yeah, in a similar way. I was impacted by the faith of young people, especially in college when I was kind of rediscovering the faith. When I saw young people living that out in a very joyful way, it made a big impression on me. And then along with just peers, friends, there were a number of mentors in a similar way. People who just modeled a beautiful life, something that was very attractive to me and something I wanted to strive after. But then as I grew in my faith, those who really impacted me the most were actually learning about the saints, learning about the lives and the teachings of the saints, and knowing that they're not just gone from this world, but they're still present with us, and we can have a relationship with them in Christ.
Mhm.
And that's something that's become an important part of my life.
Yeah, yeah. So the mentors are important. When I asked that question on this past retreat to the retreatants, who are the people who have formed you? One of the first answers was from this guy who said, the nuns, and so he went to a Catholic grade school, I'm sure, and the nuns really formed his faith. Other people, it said deacons that they know, or spiritual directors, people who meet with other Christians. So there's activities that form our faith experiences, and then there's also individuals, the formators in our lives. Let's talk about what happens when Catholics are not finding the faith formation they're looking for in their parishes.
This was one of the questions during the retreat this past weekend, I think, wasn't it?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I thought there were a lot of insightful responses from the men that were on the retreat, and one sticks to my mind particularly, that it could form an indifference.
Oh, yeah.
That if you aren't moving forward with your faith, if you're not getting that information, if you're not getting that formation, if you're not getting evangelized by the people around you or by your parish, you can become disconnected from it and become distant and cynical. I think cynical was the key word, and I thought, ooh, that's good.
And wasn't he a Zoomer? He was one of the retreatants
yes, he was
who
one of
was
the
Zooming
retreatants
in.
attending on Zoom.
Yeah, we become cynical.
There can be sort of an emotional and intellectual kind of darkness that can
Withdrawal.
slowly kind of settle.
Yeah.
I think if we're disconnected and not formed in our faith, and then before you know it, you're into other things for years or even a lifetime.
Yeah,
Something else replaces that, because there's a longing for that to be there.
Mhm.
And if it's not, then something will come along that will replace it.
Yeah. Other things that can happen to Catholics if they don't find the formation they're looking for in a parish.
Well, I know for me, I began seeking other religious traditions during college. Because I couldn't find what I was looking for in the Catholic context, I began looking into Eastern religion, Eastern spirituality, all of which I found a lot of great blessings in, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But I did slowly begin to remove myself from some of the Catholic community in college, and I think that's very much a possibility for a lot of people. They start looking at other Christian denominations or other religious traditions or other just groups that they can feel really strongly a part of and belong to, as Scott, you were mentioning. Yeah.
Were you going to say something, Scott?
No.
Oh, yeah. They'll go to other religions or other denominations. And that's why that's one of the six. When evangelical pastors are talking to Catholics, they often say, in a nice way, if you guys, meaning the Catholics, if you guys held on to your members, our churches would fold up. Because so many people in a lot of evangelical churches are ex-Catholics, or they were people who were baptized Catholics but never really discovered their faith as an adult, at least not in the Catholic Church. Then they're invited to some of these other evangelical churches, which are really, really good churches, and that's where their faith as an adult comes alive. And then those churches lots of times provide kind of a plan or a plan for faith formation. Certain guideposts that people follow to grow in the faith.
There's another kind of nun that is now becoming popular, and that's a young person who does not affiliate with any religious tradition.
With any religion, yeah. So for you who may not know this, when surveys are done and young people are asked, what religion do you identify with? Lots of different religions or a lot of different denominations are offered on the survey. And then the last one is none, N-O-N-E. Well, more and more young people are crossing the none, no affiliation. And they're called now nuns, not N-U-N-S, but N-O-N-E-S. And so a lot just don't identify.
And it's not surprising. I just rolling the dice, I bet there's a lot of those nuns that are former Catholics, or kids that
Absolutely.
were raised Catholic, because it's so typical. And I joked around about this before, that years ago there was a magazine, Envoy
Oh,
magazine.
yeah, right.
That at the time was
This
published
is a
by
good story.
Patrick Madrid, and one of their first magazine covers had won an award. I forget the Catholic media organization that granted the award, but the cover was a little boy right after receiving First Communion with his hands all folded up, and his sister with the horn-rimmed glasses. Looks like the shot was taken somewhere in the late 60s.
Yeah.
And it said, "Who do you know whose faith stopped here?"
Mhm.
And I certainly identified myself and all my brothers and sisters at that time in that category, where we were in Catholic school to a certain point after that CCD, but after I got confirmed in 6th grade, there was nothing.
Yeah.
And next thing I know, it's junior, senior year in high school, and I'm well versed on all the existentialists,
Mhm.
but don't know diddly about my own faith beyond, the Hail Mary and the Our Father that Sister Margaret Mary taught me in 4th grade.
Yeah.
We're just not sailing on much.
Mhm.
So it's not a surprise that people's faith, young people's faith, during that period just gets eaten alive.
Yeah.
Because if there isn't both that experience of being formed or being evangelized to by their peers or people in their lives that care about them, there certainly isn't the intellectual component
Right.
during that phase, unless they're really looking for it.
Mhm. Yeah, and kudos to those people who take a lot of personal initiative in their own faith formation. Most Catholics don't, and a lot of parishes don't make it easy for Catholics to get involved in some type of a faith formation program. I think another thing that happens is that Catholics will go to other Catholic organizations who do provide formation or other parishes. So that's where they'll go. We've talked about this before. One of the challenges here at Malvern is to offer some type of practical follow-up to people who make a retreat here. Lots of times people make a retreat and then they go back home, and the excitement and the enthusiasm kind of starts to wane immediately. So for you who may be watching this, we're looking at maybe in the new year to start to offer some faith formation programs that might help those who make the retreats here. We'll keep you posted about that and informed. But I was a little skittish, to be honest, Scott and Peter, about talking about faith formation this weekend. And once I got into it, the people, the retreatants had really kind of lit up, and there was a lot of energy around it, and they had a lot of opinions. So I said, I think I touched a nerve on this one. So I'm glad I took the chance, and it's really important in the church.
Especially now in our current day, where I think we're surrounded by a culture of consumerism.
Yeah.
And that's like filling the gap of a lack of a positive, formative life or principle. And a lot of the guys could resonate with what you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And they recognize the need for it in their own lives. So,
yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Well, if you're watching this, we want to thank you for your enthusiasm and for taking an initiative to grow in your faith. Keep praying for us. We want to kind of look into this whole issue of ongoing formation a little bit more, how as a retreat house we can provide that. And always come back and tune in every day at the Malvern Retreat House website. Thanks, everyone, and God bless you.